Yo, what is going on, homies? It's your boy Stumped back for another OPTC video, and in today's video, we're taking a look at the arena characters that are available on OPTC Global and Japan, putting them into a tier list to what I think is the most valuable to farm first, down to the not so valuable, I guess. But in saying that, all of the arena characters are fairly good, so if you are a newer player, I would highly recommend trying to get your hands on at least one copy of all of them and maxing out some of the better ones. With level limit break as well, it's kind of changed the game, so you endgame players, you want to look at sort of unlocking the level 5 limit break, because that 150 stat buff can be very, very powerful. In saying that though, I don't recommend getting any of these characters to level 150 unless you need to. And there's only one place that warrants that at the moment, which is Grand Voyage. And there's only one character on this list that I'm going to talk about once we get there that I think you should get to level 150 if you need to. It's only of an if you need to kind of basis. Now, myself, I'm going to farm them all up just to have level 150 available in case I ever need it, so I don't have to go and farm it then. And it's something to do. You can also farm XP with stuff like Marco and boost your pirate level as well. But if you do enjoy the content, make sure to belt the like button. If you are new to the channel, hit that big red subscribe button too. And with that said, let's dive into the tier list. Alright, so before we begin, obviously big shout out to the tier list maker as well as the database for the images provided. Both of those will be in the description below, so links will be found there. Make sure to go check them out. But as you can see on the left, we have a bunch of tiers. We've got the godly tier, which is the top, all the way down to Norbert. Now, the support tier is sort of like, honestly, like, it's not that any of these units are bad. It's just that some are better than others, or obviously some are better than others. But the support tier is just there for, like, if I don't use them for basically anything else. And like, that's sort of where they're going to fall. We do have the river, but I don't think any of these characters will make it down the river or be sent down the river. We'll have to wait and see once we actually get there. So, let's kick it off with Kamizo. Let's take a look at what he actually does. He does cut your HP by 20% and then deals 88 times that HP loss in non-type damage to all enemies. He can remove burn and damage reduction by 4 turns. And if your captain has a type slot, then he doubles the slot effects. If they don't, it's a 2.25 times orb boost. What that means is basically if you have like a strength, dex, quick, or psi or int, you're going to get a 2 times orb boost. But if you have something like a recovery, tandem, bomb, anything like that, you're going to get a 2.25, which is very, very nice for a free-to-play character. He goes on Kid for his support, and he boosts the type effects of driven characters by 1.3 at the start of the final battle. And he has a limit break ability that gives him 10 turns of cooldowns at the start of the fight. I mainly use this guy for Treasure Map. He gets 10 turns of cooldown on a 14-turn cooldown. And basically what that means is at the start of Treasure Map, you have his special ready to go, and you can just use him as a wave clearer. That's basically like his big gimmick. But he can also get around stun because he cuts your HP by 20%, so there's also that. And his support is very, very nice. So the very first arena character was pretty exciting when he first came to the game, old Kamizo, but since then, he hasn't seen too much play. On to Franosuke now. Franosuke is a Psi Free Spirit Striker character. His special will remove all beneficial effects placed on the crew, reducing attack down and despair by 4 turns. He then doubles damage dealt to enemies affected by defense down for 1 turn after 1 turn. And if you land 2 perfect strikes, he sets the defense to 0. So the way this guy works is he's got quite good utility with his attack down and his despair removal. And he can also remove positive effects, which can bite you in the ass, but most of the time you're using that to get around stuff like 1.1 times attack or orb boosts that the enemy will apply to you. So he's got great utility. Then what happens is he gives you the clock and the perfect buff, and the next turn, you ideally want to set the defense to 0 and then get the conditional boost. He's pretty good. Most of the time you're using him for that conditional boost, but it has to sort of work for him to work. It's not like, there's not really that many situations where you actually see this Frankie being like super nice to get the utility off and then the conditional boost. And for that reason, I'm probably going to drop him down to solid. Because of that, I'm going to bring Kamizo up, because I do think Kamizo is used a little bit more than Frankie actually is. But nevertheless, like, Frankie can be a pretty good unit when he works. He has Barrier Pen, which is awesome, and he has a good support, reducing attack down by 2 turns, going on Robin, Usopp, and Zoro. Moving on to the next character now, we've got X-Drake. Now, X-Drake is a bit of an interesting one. This is probably the worst of the arena characters, if I have to be completely honest. He reduces all enemies' damage null by 2 turns, threshold by 4, and does a type of color affinity boost, but for normal attacks by 1.75 for 1 turn. If you have 3 or more Psi characters on the crew, he reduces bind duration by 4 turns and boosts the chain multiplier by 0.75. But if you have 3 Dex, Quick, or Int characters, he changes all crew slots to characters' own types and sets the chain multiplier to 3 times for 1 turn. I really only ever use this guy as a support. His support is really, really nice, It goes on strength powerhouse characters and gives a 1.2 times rainbow color affinity boost on the final stage. Very good for stuff like Dofi 2, and that's pretty much all, like, the only place I use this guy. Other than that, I cannot tell you when I've ever used this X-Drake, and I guess you could argue to me that he's not bad if you can get him to work. And if you do know a situation where he has been really good, let me know in the comment section below. I love to have a chat about this sort of stuff with you guys. Keep it positive, and let's have a discussion about where you guys think these arena characters should sit. But for me, X-Drake is more of a support character. On to Bone Kichi Brook now. Lots of people love this Bone Kichi Brook, and I do understand why. For me, though, he's just amazing. He deals 100 times his attack as end of turn damage for 3 turns, delays all enemies for 2, and sets their defense to 0 for 1. If there is 1 enemy available, then he doubles the damage dealt to enemies affected by defense down for 1 turn. That's a lot of Ds, holy moly. If there are 2 or more enemies, he doubles the damage dealt to delayed enemies for 1 turn. And if the enemy is immune to status effects, he massively reduces the portion of each enemy's attack by dealt over by 3,000. So, very, very good character. Getting around resilience is just great. Self-proccing conditional boost. In most situations, if there's more than 1 enemy, you'll be able to delay them, so Bone Kichi looks great. And normally in situations where there's 1 enemy, for hard content, you can normally set the defense low. So setting defense to 0 is not to be underestimated, especially if they have like a 10-turn defense buff, like Arena Mihawk or something like that. So Bone Kichi Brook is really, really good. I use this guy a lot, mainly for getting around resilience without end of turn damage. But he's also a Brook character, and with his support, he goes on stuff like Robin, and Toki, and Toko and Hiyori. Sorry, Zoro, Toko, and Hiyori to give a 1.3 conditional boost to defense down. On to Kawamatsu now. Kawamatsu is by far my favorite of these arena characters. I think this guy's godly, an absolute weapon of a free-to-play character. Not only does he have an amazing support that goes on Odin, Okiku, and Raizu, reducing 2 turns of paralysis whenever they use their special, he has a very, very, very good special ability. 3 turns of paralysis and attack down removal, dealing 100 times his attack and strength damage to all enemies, and changing empty block bomb slots to character's own type, locking those slots for 1 turn, and then boosting Slasher and Free Spirit characters' attack by 1.75 for 1 turn, and then doubles their slot effects after 2 turns. So what that means is on the first turn, you'll get the 1.75 times attack boost, then he gives the clock buff for 2 turns, and on the next turn, you'll get the 2 times orb buff. He also rotates block orbs, badly matching orbs, bomb orbs, and empty orbs into matching, and locks them too, which is great. Plus, he has great utility for stuff like Revolution Army 2, where he can remove paralysis and attack down. A phenomenal, phenomenal rare recruit. Very, very powerful. I actually had him in on my 1 team beats all Garbs challenges as well. I use Kawamatsu so much. Like, so much. The only downside I find to Kawamatsu when I'm using this unit is when you, like, enter a stage that wipes away your positive buffs, that 2 turns of the clock buff can be a little bit detrimental, so you ideally want to stall a turn after you attack on that first turn. That's the only narc I have with the unit. Other than that, like, for a free-to-play unit, he's so ridiculously good. On to Xuanjuan Wolf now. Xuanjuan Wolf, I mainly only ever use this guy for his support, but he does have a fairly decent special ability. His support goes on Martial D Teach and Shiryu, and removes 2 turns of Chain Multiplier Growth Rate, or lock the Chain Multiplier. So if the enemy does like 2 turns of that, you can use his support to get around that. He is a driven powerhouse character, and his special reduces the decreased Chain Multiplier Growth Rate, or lock Chain Multiplier duration by 5 turns. He heals 30% of the crew's maximum HP, and then boosts the type effects of driven and powerhouse characters by 1.75. If the captain is powerhouse or driven, he doubles their slot effects for 1 turn after 2 turns. So very similar to Kawamatsu. He gives you that clock buff, and then after 2 turns, you're going to get a 2 times orb boost. He's not bad. Like, he's not bad. I feel like if you have Legend Moria, you're always using Legend Moria over this guy. Like, always. He's basically the inverse of Legend Moria, but just has a little bit of utility with removing the chain locking effects and stuff like that. I don't think I've, like, ever used this guy to be, like... that's a lie. I used him in our challenge run over in the Discord for the Bounty Hunters. Shout out to those guys. But other than that, like, I've literally never used this guy. I've used his support before. I've definitely used his support before. But I feel like his special is not bad. Like, it's not bad. Like, 2 times Orb Boost, 1.75 times Color Affinity. It's basically just like a shitty version of this Kawamatsu, if I'm completely honest with you. On to young Shinobu now. Shinobu is such another really, really good arena character. She's going to make her way up into God tier, if I'm completely honest. She has the ability to do end of turn damage for 3 turns by 200 times her attack and strength damage, so the same as Bone Kichi Brook. But she also removes blind and paralysis duration by 3 turns and removes all beneficial effects as well. So she's another one of those characters that can remove like the 1.1 times attack and orb boost if the enemy applies that to you. And then she boosts your attack by 1.75 for 1 turn as well. But if your HP is 41% or above when the special is launched, she's going to cut 40% of the crew's maximum HP and reduce her own special charge by 7 turns. So this is not only good for getting around stuff like stun, but it also means you can proc her special multiple times in the run. She's great like at the beginning of the fight because she has the reduces her own special charge by 8 turns at the start, of popping her special at the very beginning, using the end of turn damage to just single tap through the first 3 stages, and then have her special ready back and ready to go by stage 3 for an attack boost, for end of turn damage to get it around stuff like resilience, for utility for her bind and despair removal. So she's very, very good. Like this Shinobu, I love running Shinobu. She's really, really good. She has barrier pen as well. She is a free spirit shooter, so she finds her way onto a lot of teams. The only downside to Shinobu is she has a shitty support, and honestly, that doesn't even matter because like unless it's something like Kawamatsu sort of tier support, it honestly doesn't matter. That's the big downside to the unit, I guess. But most of the time with Shinobu, you're running her on the team. Onto Mihawk, Mr. Dracula Mihawk. Mihawk is very similar to Shinobu in the way that he can give himself special cooldown, which is very, very interesting. He's a slasher cerebral unit, and he does have a support that goes on Zoro and Shanks that whenever they use a special to boost attack or slot effects, he can reduce resilience by 2 turns, which isn't that amazing, but his special is a little bit better than what his support can provide. Reduces all enemies' HP by 10%, and then reduces their defense up and resilience by 5 turns, and then he sets the chain multiplier to 3 times for 1 turn. If a total damage dealt with normal attacks in the previous turn is more than 5 million, reduces his own special charge by 9 turns when the special is launched. He's on a 12-turn cooldown, so that basically means that you can just like pop his special, be down to 3 turns, and you can basically carry that into the next stage because he has a crewmate ability that reduces his own special charge by 1 turn whenever an int character uses a special. Very, very nice character, and is great for stuff like Revolution Army 2, and even like something like Dofi 2. Very, very good. He's a really, really, really good character, actually. I'm actually going to stick him up here in Amazing, or Awesome, whatever, Amazing, Awesome, same thing. The way he works in terms of like getting that 9-turn special cooldown seems a bit tricky on paper, but it's really not that hard to do. And the 5 million, I think it's like in the previous stages, not previous turn. Obviously it can get blown away with like red Haki and stuff, but I have used it in the past where I've only done like 2 million, and it still manages to proc. So I'm not 100% sure how exactly that works, but Mihawk, he's awesome. Like he's really, really awesome. Taking a look at Mr. Ashura Doji now. Ashura Doji is another really, really good arena character. For me, I think he's quite awesome as well. Actually, now I'm looking at it, I'm gonna drop Bonkichi Brook down to good. I don't think like Brook's as good as these other 2 units, if I'm completely honest with you. When you can get the conditional boost off, Brook is good, don't get me wrong. But like, we're about to talk about this Ashura Doji, and you'll understand why I want to drop Brook down. The downside to Ashura Doji is on level 2 special, he's on a 24-turn cooldown, which is absolutely insane. He's a powerhouse slasher. He has a very good support, though, which would boost characters' attack by 1.5 whenever they use a special, and it goes on basically any of the scabbards. What his special does on level 1 is he reduces special bind by 4 turns, threshold by 4 turns, does 80 times his attack in non-type damage to all enemies, doubles damage dealt to defense down for 1 turn, and boosts quick slasher and powerhouse character's base attack by 300. Now, that's on a 12-turn cooldown, which is not that bad, but his level 2 is on a 24-turn cooldown, which is actually pretty ridiculous. But for what it does, I do understand why it is so high. He sets the defense to 0 for 1 turn, reduces special bind by 6 turns, threshold by 6 turns, deals 120 times his attack to all enemies, doubles damage to defense down for 1 turn, and then boosts quick, slasher, and powerhouse character's base attack by 500. When this guy's boosted, or in a boosted event where you can just get his special charge, he is so, like, he's godly. Like, he's godly. But because he has that high charge, you don't see it that much. Level 2, you only see when you, like, it's given to you, basically. Stuff like Kazuna, stuff like point farming events. That's when you're using Ashura Doji at his finest. And he's very, very good. He was one of the hardest arenas to come out, like, back in the day. Because, like, if you didn't have King and Queen, it was just so ridiculous. Nowadays, not so much. But Ashura Doji is definitely a character that you do want to farm up if you're available to be able to beat his actual arena, because he's been so good in recent events, especially stuff like what was the recent event we had? I want to say it was Kazuna, but I don't think it was. I want to say it was, but I really don't think it was. Ashura Doji was just like a must-have unit for one of the teams. Oh, it was I'm pretty sure it was for Grand Voyage, actually. Now I'm thinking about it, I can't actually remember off the top of my head, but he's been very, very useful many, many times. taking a look at Caesar now, also Ashura Doji was like the start of when level limit break got paybacked from. So your Ashura Doji should be at like max level limit break anyway. But for you newer players, if you can get him done, get him up, he's very, very good. As for the next character we're going to talk about, we have Mr. Caesar, the GOAT Caesar. Caesar's an interesting one, right? Because on paper, he's not that good. Like, honestly, he's not that good. But if you're talking treasure map terms, like treasure map units, he's an absolute god because he does 40 times his attack in non-type damage to all enemies. He has one of the fastest specials. He gives himself 7 turns of cooldown at the start of the fight, and he has double special activation, which is very, very good limit break abilities. As for his special, though, he reduces Despair and Bind by 2 turns, 40 times attack to all enemies, and applies poison to all enemies, and then boosts the damage dealt to poison and venom for 1 turn, depending on the number of times he's used his special. On the first time, so if you've never used it, you get a 1.5 times conditional. Second turn, so if you do like the double special activation, you get a 1.75. And if you use it more than 2 times, so like on the third turn, then you are going to get a 2 times conditional boost. The downside to Caesar is poison like conditional is like by far the hardest to get off. It's great to get around resilience if it works, but the bind and despair removal is like his big thing, to be honest, in regular play most of the time. Otherwise, you are never using the Caesar. I have never in my life used this Caesar, besides in treasure map. So if you're talking treasure map, yeah, we're up here. Like, not even a question about it. We're talking awesome. We're talking godly. I wish you could go to the front of the goddamn thing. That would be absolutely incredible. My God, you'd be talking godly. But for me, he's just solid. Like, he's just a solid unit if you can get that conditional boost off. Very similar to Frankie. Like, if you can make him work, he works. But it's just very rare that he actually does. For that reason, we're going to drop him down. On to Crocodilus. Now, Crocodilus, when he first came out, he just seems so basic on paper. He reduces HP by 10%, decreases chain multiply growth rate, and removes sound effects by 7 turns, poisons all enemies, applies venom for 300 times the character's attack to one enemy, and doubles the type effects for int characters for 1 turn. And if the captain is an int character, he makes strength, dex, quick, and psi slots have beneficial slot effects for int characters. On paper, right, he seems pretty like mid, right? Nothing too special about him. He's just a base stat booster. He's got slot bind, crit, and enrage. Very basic looking arena character. And like, honestly, he's not bad. Like, he's not bad. The problem with him is he has another Croc that's out that literally does the same thing. He's a Driven and Striker, which are very, very good. But, big but, huge but, I should say. Because arena characters are all 40 cost, this guy can actually be slid into the Grand Voyage team, taking on Luffy at Orange Town for the cost required event, because you can actually poison the enemy, and he's a color affinity booster, which is very, very good. And for that reason, like, he's honestly up here in godly. Grand Voyage at the moment is the hardest content in the entire game, and level 5 is no joke. Like, it is disgustingly hard at the moment, as of like what, May 7th, that like 2022, when I'm making this video. It's disgustingly hard. On paper though, Crocodile not bad. Like, there's just better options that you would want to run for everyday content. Again, like we're talking about, if we're talking about Caesar and Treasure Map, like, yeah, then Caesar's a godly unit. But we're not. We're talking about him in just like everyday play, so he's just solid. Crocodile in Grand Voyage, godly unit, but otherwise, everywhere else, he's just not bad. Lucky for us, he came out around that October period, the Boa and Perona batch, so you should have him level 5, level limit broken. And if you're new and you're struggling with the Grand Voyage event, get him to level 150, because he's going to hit like an absolute freight train, and it's going to help you just get those high damage numbers that you actually need drastically when it comes to Grand Voyage. The final character on this particular list, before we add the final 2, is actually Luffy. This Luffy came out around the time of Nami and Usopp and Robin Jinbei, and a lot of people were giving this guy a little slack when he first came out. I've always liked the unit. Fighter free spirit character with base stats as his support that goes on every single character, so it's a nice little support if you guys are struggling for that. But the downside is, he's a Luffy, and you're probably going to have other Luffys that just do better supports. The thing about this guy is, though, he has hunger, which is very rare in a free-to-play character. So if you are a newer player and you're looking for hunger characters, farm this guy up, because he's going to be available all the time in the Raid Collective Archive. He has a 3-stage special ability, so let's break this down for a second. On turn, like stage 1, at 6 turns, he halves enemies' defense for 1 turn, changes block slots to character's own type, and a 2.75 times chain lock. Pretty stock standard, 6 turn cooldown, it's okay, it's kind of nice. Like 2.75 times chain multiplier, locker, can do a lot of damage, halving defense, getting around defense up can be quite nice, and then changing block ops is good utility. But most of the time, you're going to be wanting to look at his level 3. His level 2, though, reduces HP by 10%, reduces all enemies' defense for 1 turn drastically, so about 80%, removes all poison from the crew, and changes crew's block slots to own type, as well as setting the chain multiplier to 3 times. So getting a little bit stronger there on a 10-turn cooldown. But then finally on a 14-turn cooldown, he still does the 10% HP cut. He's going to set the defense to 0 now, and he's going to poison all... and remove all poison from the crew. He changes block slots to carry its own type, and then becomes a 3.5 times chain lock for 1 turn, which is very, very strong. In saying that, though, this guy's kind of just like, he's just good. Like, he's just a good unit. 3.5 times chain lock, a lot of damage output. Does damage, so you can do a lot of cool supports. Namely, stuff like Zoro. You can use Super Type Zoro as a support for an orb boost as well. Setting defense to 0 is Gatorade, getting around defense up. Removing poison's great for getting around blocks, poison slots. So he's a good unit. Like he's a good damage dealing unit. He has some pretty nice utility. You could probably argue to me that he's solid, but like I've always loved running this Luffy, to be honest. And for that reason, I'm going to stick him up here in good. Let's take a look at the last 2 units now, which are Arena Queen and Arena Hawkins. Alright, so the final 2 arena characters are the 13-star arenas. And like with Arena Queen, we thought like we were about to get some like really, really hard content. Turns out Arena Queen was probably like one of the easier arenas, especially if you compare it to stuff like Swanjuan or... Well, Swanjuan wasn't too hard if you stall it out, but like Ashura Doji was by far the hardest at this particular point. Hawkins though is actually fairly challenging as well. But Queen deals random strength damage to random enemies 15 times, reduces 7 turns of burn, and if you're above 50% HP when the special is launched, you can't be KO'd for 1 turn. Changes block slots to carry its own type, and then boosts the damage to defense down enemies by 2.25. Why he does the 2.25 and then doesn't set the defense low is beyond me. You can hybrid him up, stuff like with like this Luffy and whatnot, and he came out alongside a Jack, a free-to-play Jack character, with the Neko and Inu release, V2 Neko Inu. But for this guy, like, honestly, like, he's the first character I'm going to put in the river. Like, I don't ever think I've ever used this Queen, like, ever. Like, even as, like, a support, he's, like, support just removes burn by 3 turns on Jack, Kaido, and King. And even that, like, even when I've wanted to use it, it sucked. Like, it's just never been good. 7 turns of burn removal might see some play, but with the release of, like, Legend Frankie, like, I just don't think it's ever going to be, like, that essential to have 7 turns of burn removal when you've got a Legend that can just remove 10 of it, like, in their kit. 2.25 conditional boost to defense sounds nice, but without proccing that condition themselves, it means you have to bring another character to do that, which, like, honestly, I'm just not a fan of that. I'm not a big fan at all. You could probably say to me that he's not bad, but, like, to get the damage output that this guy, like, wants to provide, like, you need another character there with him, and for that reason, like, I'm sending him down the river. Like, I'm sorry, Funk King, but, like, it's the way it has to be. Moving on to Hawkins now, the latest arena, another 13-star, who's very, very difficult. Like, he's a very difficult, arena, and it's sort of what we're hoping for when it comes to arenas. I did try and, like, use Marco, the new Marco in this arena, in, like, the final, like, half an hour. And honestly, I was like pulling my hair out trying to build a team for that, and I just kind of just went and stuffed this now. It's built so heavily around Frankie and the removal of attack down that this guy was actually fairly tricky to actually build for. Nevertheless, it was very doable. Like, we did manage to make no stall teams fairly nicely. Neko and Inu like absolutely crushed it, which was awesome. And if you haven't like Legend Frankie or a friend captain Legend Frankie, the General Frankie V2, you are going to be able to find a very accessible team to take this down. But Hawkins is a very unique character. He's a cerebral striker, and he's special. He's also Psy. His special reduces slot bind by 2 turns. One of the only characters in the game, by the way, that can actually remove slot bind with their special, which is awesome. Increases all enemies' damage taken by 1.5 for 3 turns, and deals 250 times his attack in Psy damage to all enemies at the end of the turn for the number of turns equal to the number of enemies present. So if there's 3 enemies present, he's going to do end of turn damage for 3 turns. He does 1.5 extra damage, and he also has the limit break ability that gives him 5 turns of special charge at the start of the fight. On a 12-turn cooldown, this guy's he's pretty good. The downside to him is obviously full immunity cucks the extra damage debuff, and if you don't have that, you're basically just using him for the slot bind removal, as well as having the end of turn damage to get around stuff like resilience. When he works, though, he's really good. Like, he's a really, really good character. And I think I'm going to put him in awesome. I don't know if I'm going to leave him there moving forward, just because, like, the slot bind removal makes him so unique And that's sort of why I want to put him here in awesome rather than like in something like good. Because I do think he's better than like Bonkichi Brook because he can give that end of turn damage like Bonkichi Brook can. Bonkichi Brook's related around sort of conditional effects, where so is Hawkins. But Hawkins is just way better in my opinion. The 1.5 times extra damage is going to see a lot more play than something like a defense down conditional or a delay conditional. Not to mention that, but he also has that unique slot bind removal, which is really, really cool. So I do think he's quite awesome. I don't think he's as good as a Shuridoji though. So for that reason, honestly, I think I'm gonna move a Shuridoji. Oh, if a Shuridoji doesn't work, like you don't get that fight like that, the special off that level 2, like you're just never using a Shuridoji, to be honest with you. Maybe I want to move Bonkichi Brook back up into awesome. Yeah, maybe I do. Yeah, look, if we're gonna put Basil Hawkins up in awesome because of like if his conditional works, then I do think it's probably in our best interest to move Bonkichi Brook up here as well, and then that way we can have the 4 of these guys sitting here in awesome. I do think that's probably fair. Like if Bonkichi Brook's gonna have Hawkins has the conditional be up here, so does Bonkichi. So they're pretty similar in terms of what they do, but Hawkins does have that, obviously, slot bind removal too. So there you guys go. They're the arena characters that are available over on OPTC at the moment. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. And if you did enjoy the video, make sure to belt the like button for me. If you are new to the channel as well, hit that big red subscribe button. Or if you haven't done so already, what are you doing? It's good OPTC content. Smash the subscribe button for me. Most importantly, though, guys, wherever you are in this beautiful world, please remember to enjoy the rest of your day. As always, homies, I thank you for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Lates!